This homeless man may look like just another beggar on the street, but he's not what you think. Because what these cruel people don't know is that they're about to mock a racing legend who once earned millions of dollars. If these racist bullies weren't so quick to judge people by their skin color and clothes, they wouldn't lose everything when the shocking truth comes out. But sometimes, people need to learn the hard way that respect costs nothing, but the lack of it can cost you everything. Marcus Johnson stood outside the expensive racing garage, his clothes dirty and torn. His dark skin was dusty from sleeping on the streets. His hair was messy and gray, but his eyes still had that special shine that comes from years of driving fast cars at dangerous speeds. "Hey, get away from here!" shouted Brad Wilson, the white garage owner. "This isn't a place for beggars. Go find somewhere else to ask for money." The other workers laughed. Tommy, a young white mechanic, pointed at Marcus and said, "Look at this guy. He probably doesn't even know what a car engine looks like." Marcus spoke calmly. "I'm not asking for money. I'm asking for work. I can fix that red Ferrari over there in exchange for some food." The whole garage burst out laughing. Even the customers waiting for their cars started to stare and whisper. A rich white woman covered her nose and moved away, as if Marcus smelled bad. "Did you hear that?" Brad shouted to everyone. "The homeless guy wants to work on a $300,000. Ferrari! That's the funniest thing I've heard all week." But Marcus didn't get angry. His eyes looked at the Ferrari with the kind of knowledge that comes from years of experience. Something about the way he studied the car caught the attention of Lisa Martinez, the only Hispanic worker in the garage. "What's wrong with the car?" Marcus asked, ignoring all the laughter. Brad walked closer, his face red with anger. "The problem is that you're standing in my garage like you belong here. Security, get this bum out of here." Marcus didn't move. Instead, he listened carefully to the sound of the Ferrari's engine when Tommy started it for another test. The engine made a strange noise that had been puzzling the mechanics for days. "Turbo system," Marcus said quietly. "The wastegate is stuck. That's why the car loses power at high speed. It's not the engine. It's the pressure control." The laughing stopped. Tommy had been working on that exact problem for 3 days without finding the answer. "Just by listening?" Tommy asked, not laughing anymore. "How can you know that just by hearing it?" But Brad quickly got angry again. "Lucky guess. Anyone can make up technical words and hope they're right." Marcus smiled sadly. It was a smile that carried memories of better times, when crowds cheered his name instead of mocking him. "It wasn't a guess," he said. "That specific sound happens when the wastegate valve gets carbon buildup. The turbo can't control pressure properly, so the engine goes into safe mode." Lisa walked closer. She was curious now. There was something about his technical explanation that sounded too professional for someone living on the streets. "How do you know so much about Ferrari engines?" she asked. Marcus hesitated. For a moment, he looked like he was deciding how much to tell them. "I've worked with race cars before," he said. "Where?" Brad asked with a nasty laugh. "At the junkyard?" More laughter filled the garage, but this time, Marcus didn't smile. Something dark and painful crossed his face. A old hurt that he carried like a heavy weight. "Different places," he answered. "I can prove I'm right about the turbo. Just give me the tools." Tommy pointed to an expensive computer near the Ferrari. "You think you can use that diagnostic machine? That thing costs more than most people make in a year." "Yes, I can use it," Marcus said simply. His answer was so confident that even Brad started to feel curious, despite trying to stay mean. "Okay," Brad said with a cruel smile. "I'll give you one chance. If you find the problem, I'll give you $50 and a sandwich. But if you're wrong, I never want to see you near my garage again, and I'll film the whole thing to post online so everyone can laugh at you." Marcus nodded calmly. He was used to bets like this. But as he walked toward the diagnostic machine, Lisa noticed something the others missed. His hands weren't shaking because he was nervous. They were shaking because he was excited, like someone who was about to show a part of himself that he had kept hidden for a very long time. Standing there in front of all those hateful looks, he remained strong, like someone who held a secret, too powerful to reveal before the right moment. The diagnostic computer turned on with electronic beeps. Everyone in the garage crowded around to watch what they expected to be an embarrassing show. Brad already had his phone out, recording every move. Tommy and the other mechanics were betting on how long it would take for the homeless man to give up. $20 says he doesn't even know how to turn it on, Tommy whispered loudly. But Marcus connected the cable to the Ferrari with an ease that made Lisa frown. His fingers moved through the computer menus like it was natural, accessing diagnostic levels that Tommy rarely used in his years as a mechanic. "That's impossible," Tommy said when he saw Marcus go directly to the turbo management system. "How does he know those access codes?" Marcus ignored the comments. He was completely focused on the computer screen. For several minutes, the only sound was electronic beeping as he read technical data at amazing speed. "There it is," he said calmly, pointing to the screen. "Error code P0243, turbo wastegate solenoid malfunction. Just like I said." The silence was uncomfortable. Tommy checked the computer reading and his face went pale. That's exactly right," he admitted. 3 days of searching, and this guy found it in 5 minutes. Brad quickly put his phone away. He was clearly upset that he didn't get the embarrassing video he wanted to post online. "Beginner's luck," he said. "Anyone can press random buttons until something works." Random buttons? Marcus turned to look at Brad for the first time with a dangerous look in his eyes. "Do you want me to explain why this particular wastegate fails on this model when the air filter isn't changed regularly?" The question caught Brad off guard. He had no idea how to answer. Tommy tried to take control of the situation. "Okay, you got lucky this time, but guessing one problem doesn't make you a real mechanic." "Guessing?" Marcus smiled, but there was no happiness in it. "I can tell you 3 other problems this car will have in the next 6 months if they're, not fixed now." "How can you possibly know that?" Lisa asked, walking closer. His confidence was making her professionally curious. Marcus hesitated again, like he was deciding how much to tell them. "Because I've seen this pattern of problems hundreds of times. Ferrari 458 Italia from 2010 to 2015 has a predictable sequence of failures when not maintained properly." Tommy shook his head. "Hundreds of times? Where did you work that you saw hundreds of Ferraris?" "Places where cars like this were normal, not special," Marcus replied, being vague again. Brad didn't like where the conversation was going. He was losing control, and his authority was being questioned by someone who should have been begging for food. "Listen here, old man," he said, walking closer aggressively. "I don't know what game you're playing, but this is a serious garage. We don't need cheap tricks to impress anyone." "Tricks?" Marcus stared him straight in the eye. "Want to see a real trick?" Before anyone could respond, he walked over to a white Lamborghini that had been sitting in the corner for 2 weeks. "That car over there. You told the customer it needs a new transmission, right?" Brad tensed up. It was true, but how did this homeless guy know that? "The problem isn't the transmission," Marcus continued. "It's the clutch hydraulic system, a $800 part. You quoted $25,000 for a new transmission." Tommy swallowed hard. "How can you tell just by looking?" "Because I heard the specific noise when you started the car earlier," Marcus said, walking over to the Lamborghini. "I can prove it." Lisa watched in fascination as he opened the hood and pointed to exact parts with surgical precision. "Look at these hydraulic lines. See the wear here, the fluid stains there? These are classic symptoms of hydraulic failure, not transmission problems." Tommy quickly ran a diagnostic test and confirmed what Marcus said. His face turned red with embarrassment. "My God," Lisa whispered. "If he's right, we were going to charge the customer $2,200 more for a problem that doesn't exist." Brad realized he was completely losing control of the situation. It's just coincidence. 2 lucky guesses in a row. Nothing more. Marcus stared at him with a look that made Brad's blood run cold. For a moment, Brad saw something in those eyes that he recognized instinctively. The quiet authority of someone who had been in charge, who had led people, who had been respected. "Coincidence," Marcus repeated slowly. "Like when you said my first diagnosis was beginner's luck?" The tension in the garage was thick. Lisa felt like she was watching something much bigger than a simple misunderstanding. There were layers to this situation she didn't understand yet. "Do you still want that sandwich?" Brad asked sarcastically, trying to get his power back. "Or are you going to keep pretending to be an expert on expensive cars?" Marcus was quiet for several long seconds. When he finally spoke, his voice carried a deep sadness that made Lisa shiver. "I've been many things in my life," he said calmly, "but I've never pretended to be something I'm not." He started walking toward the door, but Brad couldn't let him go. The humiliation he planned to film had backfired, and that was unacceptable. "Hey, wait a minute," Brad shouted. "You come here, cause trouble, do some magic tricks, and think you can walk out like some kind of hero?" Marcus stopped at the door without turning around. "Heroes don't exist," he replied, his voice almost too quiet to hear. "There are only people who have lost everything and still try to help others." He left the garage, leaving behind heavy silence and 4 people who were starting to suspect they had just met someone much more complex than he appeared. Lisa ran to the window and watched him walk slowly down the street, his hands in his pockets, his shoulders bent like someone carrying an invisible weight. For a moment, she thought she saw him stop in front of a photo taped to a telephone pole. One of those missing person photos that no one notices anymore. What she couldn't see was the tear that ran down his face as he recognized something in that child's photo. The same innocence that his own daughter had lost 15 years ago on a rainy night, he would never be able to forget. Every perfect diagnosis, every moment of humiliation he accepted in silence, every day lived on the streets. It was all part of a punishment he had given himself for a tragedy that still ate at him inside. But what the racist mechanics at Wilson's garage didn't know was that they were dealing with someone who had already lost everything once. And when you have nothing left to lose, each new injustice only feeds a determination they could not yet understand. Lisa couldn't sleep that night. Something about the way the man analyzed the cars, the surgical precision of his diagnoses, the way he navigated the computer systems like it was second nature, it all kept hammering at her mind. The next morning, she arrived at the garage an hour early and went straight to the computer. If her suspicions were correct, there would be digital traces of that extraordinary technical knowledge. "Turbo wastegate, clutch hydraulic system," she muttered, typing in the specific terms he had used. "Ferrari 458 Italia 2010 to 2015. The search results left her speechless. These weren't things that any regular mechanic would know by heart. They were technical details that only specialized engineers or professional race car drivers would completely understand. Tommy arrived to find her still staring at the screen. "Lisa, what are you doing here so early?" "Researching that man from yesterday." She turned the screen toward him. "Look at these racing forums. The specifications he mentioned are only discussed in very specific circles of professional motorsports." "So what? Anyone can read that stuff on the internet." "Tommy," she said patiently. He knew the diagnostic codes from memory. He didn't read them online. He knew them. Brad arrived at that moment, hearing the end of their conversation. "Are you still talking about that crazy homeless guy?" Forget it, Lisa. It was luck, coincidence, anything but real talent. But Lisa had found something more interesting. On a specialized racing forum from 2008, a user called Speed Demon MJ had posted incredibly detailed technical analyses of the same car models that the homeless man had diagnosed yesterday. "Brad, look at this," she insisted, showing him the screen. "This guy here was predicting exactly the problems our homeless man identified, but he posted this 7 years before those cars even hit the market." "Coincidence," Brad repeated, but his voice sounded less sure. That's when the garage door opened and Marcus appeared again. This time, he wasn't alone. An elegant, middle-aged white woman walked with him, someone who clearly didn't belong in that working-class neighborhood. "Good morning," Marcus said calmly. "This is Patricia Hamilton. She owns a McLaren 720S that you said was impossible to fix." Brad went pale. That case had been his biggest failure in recent months, a $400,000 McLaren with an electronic problem that no repair shop in the city had been able to solve. "Mrs. Hamilton," Brad stammered, "what are you doing here with him?" Patricia smiled coldly. "I met this gentleman last night in my hotel parking lot. When I mentioned my car problem, he gave me such an accurate technical explanation that I decided to bring him here myself." "He gave you a technical explanation about a McLaren?" Tommy asked, not believing it. "Hybrid system control failure," Marcus said calmly. "Conflict between the electric motor and gas engine computer programs. Known problem in the 2019 models, but McLaren never publicly admitted it." The silence in the garage was deafening. Lisa quickly checked the computer and found exactly what he had described. A confidential technical bulletin that only authorized McLaren dealers should have access to. "How do you know that?" Tommy asked, arriving at that moment and hearing the conversation. Marcus hesitated, showing that same evasive look from before. "I've worked with high-performance cars." "Where?" Brad insisted, his arrogance giving way to something that looked like nervousness. "Various places over the years." Patricia noticed the tension in the air. "Well, if you don't want to fix my car, I can take it somewhere else." No, Brad said quickly. "Of course we want to fix it. It's just that he," Marcus pointed calmly at Brad, "said my knowledge was just showing off." The situation was getting uncomfortable. Patricia was clearly an important customer, and her presence there with this homeless man was making Brad sweat. "Maybe we can make a deal," Marcus said. "If I fix Mrs. Hamilton's McLaren, you give me a real chance to show what I know, not to earn a sandwich, but to actually work." Brad looked at Patricia, then at Marcus, quickly thinking, if Marcus failed, Brad would be embarrassed in front of a wealthy customer. If he succeeded, well, Brad didn't even want to think about that possibility. "What if you can't fix it?" Brad asked. "If I can't fix it, I'll never come back here again, and you can film my failure and post it wherever you want." Lisa watched, fascinated, as the two men stared at each other. There was something about this negotiation that went far beyond a simple car repair. "All right," Brad finally agreed. "But you have 2 hours. If you don't fix it in that time, you're out of here forever." Marcus nodded and walked over to the McLaren. His hands touched the hood with an almost religious respect, like he was meeting an old friend after years of separation. Patricia approached Lisa. "There's something special about this man," she whispered. "Last night, when he explained the problem with my car, it was like listening to a master talking about his art." Lisa nodded, watching as Marcus opened the hood of the McLaren with precise, confident movements. "Can I ask you something, Mrs. Hamilton? How exactly did you two meet?" He was sitting on the sidewalk looking at a small photograph and crying quietly. When I approached to offer help, he asked me if I had children. Patricia wiped her eyes. "He said he lost his daughter a long time ago and has been trying to find meaning in his life ever since. The revelation hit Lisa like a punch in the stomach. Suddenly, everything made sense. The sadness in his eyes, the way he talked about cars like they were more than machines, the quiet acceptance of humiliation. Meanwhile, Marcus worked on the McLaren with total concentration that mesmerized everyone in the garage. Every movement was calculated. Every decision was precise. It was like watching a surgeon saving a life. 2 hours passed like 2 minutes. When he finally looked up, his eyes shone with a satisfaction he hadn't shown since he first appeared there. "Done," he said simply. Patricia started the car and it purred like a satisfied cat. The difference was obvious to hear. Where before there had been strange noises and hesitation, now there was only pure, controlled power. "My God," she whispered, tears in her eyes. "3 dealerships told me it was impossible to fix without replacing the entire system for $60,000. Brad was in shock. Tommy looked like he had seen a ghost. Lisa, however, was beginning to piece together a much bigger puzzle. That afternoon, as Marcus prepared to leave after refusing any payment from Patricia, Lisa caught up with him on the street. "Wait," she called. "I need to ask you something." He stopped but didn't turn around completely. "You're not an ordinary mechanic, are you?" He was silent for several long seconds. When he finally spoke, his voice carried the weight of years of pain. "I've been many things in my life. Mechanic was never one of them." "Then what were you?" For a moment, when he turned to look at her, Lisa saw beyond the messy appearance, beyond the sadness, beyond the resignation. She saw a man who had once controlled $500,000 machines at 200 miles per hour, who had tasted victory and felt the weight of absolute loss. "I was someone who believed that speed could heal any pain," he replied, "until I learned that some wounds only heal when you stop running from them." He walked away, leaving Lisa standing there, realizing that she had just met someone whose story was much deeper and more tragic than anyone in the garage could have imagined. That night, she would return to the computer with a new suspicion, and what she would discover about that man would change not only her understanding of him, but everything she thought she knew about legends, falls from grace, and impossible second chances. Lisa spent the entire night researching. When the sun came up, she had a discovery in her hands that would change everything forever. "Marcus Lightning Johnson," she whispered, staring at the computer screen. 3-time NASCAR Cup Series champion, known as the Ghost, for his ability to appear out of nowhere and win impossible races. The photos showed a younger man with shorter hair holding trophies and champagne, surrounded by crowds chanting his name, the same face that yesterday had been humiliated over a sandwich. Further research revealed the tragedy. In 2009, during a race in Daytona, a tire blowout caused his car to crash at 180 miles per hour. He survived, but his 8-year-old daughter, who was watching from the stands, was so scared that she had a panic attack and died from heart failure at the hospital. His wife couldn't forgive him and took her own life 6 months later. Marcus Johnson disappeared from the racing world that same year. He sold everything, donated millions to charity, and vanished completely until yesterday when he showed up asking to repair a car in exchange for food. Lisa arrived at the garage determined, but found a surprise. Brad was recording a mocking video on his phone. "Guys, you won't believe the story I have to tell," he said to the camera. "Yesterday, a homeless black guy showed up here who thought he was a mechanic. The guy was so desperate he offered to work for food." Tommy and the other mechanics laughed, in the background, acting out the man's moments of humiliation. "The funniest part," Brad continued, "is that the old guy did some tricks with a computer and now thinks he's an expert on expensive cars. I'm going to post this and get thousands of views laughing at his face." Lisa felt her blood boil. "Brad, you can't post that." "Why not? It's free content. Homeless man tries to be mechanic and fails miserably is going to go viral." Because you're about to become the biggest fool on the internet. Brad stopped recording, annoyed. What are you talking about? Lisa opened her laptop and turned the screen so everyone could see. Everyone, let me introduce you to Marcus Lightning Johnson, three-time NASCAR Cup Series champion, winner of 47 Cup races, and considered one of the most talented drivers in racing history. The silence in the garage was deafening. Brad looked at the screen, then at Lisa, then back at the screen. That's impossible, Tommy stammered. The guy was asking for food. The guy, Lisa continued without mercy, lost everything after a personal tragedy and has been living on the streets for 15 years. And yesterday you humiliated a racing legend because he looked different than you expected. Tommy approached the screen, studying the photos carefully. Oh my God, it really is him. I had posters of this man on my wall when I was a kid. Brad was as pale as a sheet. But he didn't say anything. Why didn't he tell us who he was? Because men like Marcus Johnson don't have to prove anything to people like you, Lisa replied coldly. At that moment, the door opened and Marcus entered, followed by Patricia Hamilton and 3 other elegantly dressed people. Good morning, he said, calmly. I brought some friends who wanted to see the garage. Brad's throat tightened as he recognized one of the figures. Jonathan Reed, CEO of Reed Motorsports Group, the largest racing team management company on the East Coast. Mr. Johnson, Reed said respectfully, when Patricia told me about your impressive diagnostics, I had to come see for myself. I'm offering you the position of technical director of our racing division. Starting salary, $400,000 a year plus bonuses. Another man stepped forward. David Chen, Formula One technical consultant. Our offer is $600,000 a year. Marcus listened quietly, but his eyes were focused on Brad. Interesting how people change their behavior when they find out who you really are. Lisa approached him with her laptop. Marcus, you need to see something. She showed him the video. Brad was recording. Marcus watched silently as Brad and the others mocked him, planning to make his humiliation go viral on social media. You were going to post this? Marcus asked Brad, his voice dangerously calm. Brad tried to explain, but his words came out jumbled. I didn't know. I'm sorry. I didn't know you were famous, that you had money. Marcus moved closer to him. You didn't know I had money? Or didn't you know that I was a human being who deserved basic respect? Jonathan Reed overheard the conversation, and his expression changed completely. Brad Wilson, correct? Are you the owner of this garage? Yes, sir, Brad replied nervously. Well, I just canceled the maintenance contract my racing team had with you. 30 cars a month, $200,000 a year. I don't do business with people who humiliate vulnerable individuals. Patricia joined the conversation. I'm also going to recommend to all my friends at the country club that they avoid this garage. Word travels fast among our circle. Tommy tried to intervene. Gentlemen, it was just a misunderstanding. Misunderstanding? Marcus asked. You laughed at my appearance, called me crazy, offered $50 for work worth thousands, and planned to use me as internet entertainment? Which part was the misunderstanding? Lisa pulled out her phone. Actually, I recorded everything yesterday. She showed the video where Brad, Tommy, and the other mechanics humiliated Marcus, and I already posted it on social media with his real identity. 25,000 shares in the last 3 hours. Brad felt his legs go weak. His reputation, his business, everything was falling apart in real time. Marcus turned to Lisa. Thank you for believing in me when no one else did. Then he looked at the businessman. Gentlemen, I truly appreciate your offers, but first I need to take care of some unfinished business here. He approached Brad one last time. Yesterday you said I should know my place. Today you'll learn what yours is. Jonathan Reed handed his business card to Lisa. Young lady, If you ever want to work for a company that values character over appearance, call me. As the group prepared to leave, Marcus stopped at the door. Brad, that video you were going to post mocking me? Lisa posted the real version of the story. Now the whole world can see who really needs to learn about humility. He left, leaving behind a silent garage and 3 men who had just discovered the true price of prejudice. Brad looked at his phone and saw notifications exploding. Angry comments, customers canceling contracts, suppliers cutting ties. In just a few hours, Wilson's garage had become synonymous with racism and cruelty. Tommy approached the window and saw Marcus getting into a limousine with the businessmen, while reporters who had arrived to cover the story waited outside. "Man," one of the mechanics whispered, "we just humiliated a racing legend because he was black and looked poor." But perhaps the most frightening thing wasn't the financial ruin that awaited them, or the public humiliation they would face. It was the terrible realization that Marcus Johnson had orchestrated every second of those 2 days, allowing them to reveal exactly who they were before showing them who he really was. 6 months later, Marcus Johnson was the technical director of Reed Motorsports Group, earning $400,000 a year. His story of going from rags to riches had become a Netflix documentary, inspiring millions of people around the world. Wilson's garage closed its doors after 2 months. Brad lost everything: his house, his cars, his reputation. Tommy and the other mechanics were fired and had to move to different cities to escape the viral humiliation. Lisa, the only one who defended Marcus, was hired by his team with a salary 3 times higher than what she made before. "Prejudice doesn't just blind those who discriminate," Marcus said in a TV interview. "It blinds an entire society to extraordinary talents hidden behind appearances. We choose not to see past." Brad tried to apologize publicly, but it was too late. He learned that humiliating vulnerable people doesn't just destroy other people's lives, it eventually destroys your own. The best revenge wasn't destroying Brad's life. It was showing the world that second chances exist for those who offer them to others, not for those who deny them. Marcus used his new position and wealth to start a foundation helping homeless people get job training and second chances. He never forgot what it felt like to be judged by his appearance rather than his abilities. "Every person you meet is fighting a battle you know nothing about," he often said. "The least we can do is treat each other with basic human dignity." The A story became a viral sensation, not just because of the dramatic reversal, but because it reminded people of a simple truth. You never know who you're really talking to. The person you mock today might be the legend you admired yesterday, or the boss who could change your life tomorrow. Brad Wilson learned this lesson too late. But for millions of people who heard Marcus Johnson's story, it became a powerful reminder that respect, kindness, and basic human decency should never depend on someone's appearance, race, or social status. Sometimes the most powerful lessons come disguised as the people we least expect to teach them. Marcus Johnson had lost everything once, but in losing everything, he had also learned the most important lesson of all. True strength isn't measured by how fast you can drive or how much money you have. It's measured by how you treat people, when you think nobody important is watching. And in the end, everybody is watching, and everybody is important.